Hello friends, we will discuss INICET medicine portion May 2022 recall session. This time medicine questions were overlapping with other topics as well. So it was an integrated approach of medicine this time. Starting with the question number 1. Question is patient presented with palpitations. Patient is a case of diabetes. On examination, BP is 128 by 78, that is BP is normal, and ECG is shown as in this figure. So question is, what is the next step in the management of this patient? So if we look at this ECG and especially the lead 2, so this lead 2 we can very well say that it is a case of a tachycardia because the RR interval is 10. So approximately the heart rate is 150. And P wave is not seen and the rhythm is regular. So this is most likely a diagnosis of PSVT, paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, and patient vitals are stable. So we can go for a carotid massage, but carotid massage is not given in the options. So the next line step after the carotid massage is adenosine will be given in our patient. Primary PCI, even if it is a case of myocardial infarction, the first step will be to control the fast ventricle rate. So adenosine will be given. Cardioversion will be given if patient vitals are unstable. So unstable means hypotension, shock, crepitations, cyanosis. This should have been given. Amiodarone will be given if it is a case of a ventricle tachycardia. So the best answer here will be B option. Question number 2, a 4-year-old boy with a weight of 15 kg, serum creatinine is 1. What will be the GFR? So the GFR will be estimated by the bedside Schwartz equation, which is 0.413 multiplied by height in centimeters divided by serum creatinine in milligram per deciliter. So this is simple height of the boy here. I think it is not written, but it was 100 centimeter. And creatinine is 1, so this will come out to be approximately 41. So the best nearest response is the B option here. Answer is B. Now question number 3. Question is, which of the following clinical presentation will not occur due to the lesion in the spinal cord? So the A option is crossed hemiplegia. Now what is the meaning of a crossed hemiplegia? Crossed hemiplegia means the facial nerve will be of one side and the paralysis of the limbs will be of other side. So when does this crossed hemiplegia occur? When there is a lesion at brainstem. Lesion at the brainstem, especially where the facial nerve is there, that is pons. Lesion at the pons. So when the lesion at the pons is there, so it will produce a ipsilateral facial nerve involvement. So ipsilateral facial, because the facial nerve arise from the pons, so this will be the lower motor neuron type of the lesion in the pons. So ipsilateral facial nerve will be there. But the pyramidal pathway have not yet crossed, so it will be a contralateral hemiplegia. Contralateral hemiplegia will be there. So that means ki crossed hemiplegia is suggestive of a pontine lesion or a brainstem lesion. While bladder involvement can occur in a spinal cord lesion, yes, true. UMN and LMN, both lesions can be seen. Yes, it is true, because spinal cord, if what happens that these fibers of lower limbs are going here, and this is a fiber of upper limb. So if the lesion is at this particular level, so the upper limb will have a lower motor neuron, but it will be a upper motor neuron for the lower legs. So both the lesions can be seen at the level of spinal cord. Sensory loss as a specific level, that is a hallmark of or pathological feature of a spinal cord involvement. So answer here is crossed hemiplegia. Now, coming to the question number 4. 14-year-old boy has a pain over the knee joint with a rash as shown in this figure. So the rash is over the knuckles area that you can see, and this is a typical of a Gorton rash which is seen in the dermatomyositis. So this is the C option, which is the best answer here. Such type of the rash, rheumatoid arthritis and scleroderma, it is not seen, and osteoarthritis are definitely not. Now come to the question number 5. So this time spinal cord questions and the localization of the lesion. These questions were asked in the CNS section of medicine. So all are true regarding the Brown-Sequard syndrome except. So you have to understand that the Brown-Sequard syndrome is due to the hemisection of the spinal cord. One side of the spinal cord is affected. So what will happen? Suppose this is a lower level. The fiber of the spinothalamic tract, they cross one or two level above, they cross and then ascend. But the fibers of the posterior column, they ascend on the same side till below the medulla. So spinothalamic and the dorsal column fibers. The spinothalamic, we all know they carry the pain, touch, temperature, and dorsal column, they carry the vibration and position sense. As well as there are the fibers, lower motor neuron fibers of the particular area like upper limb or maybe lower limbs. So these are the you can say corticospinal tract fibers or a pyramidal fibers, they are located here. So if there is a hemisection, so you can understand what will be affected. The affected will be the pain and temperature or maybe touch of opposite side, while the vibration or we can say proprioception is through the dorsal column, and pain, temperature, touch is through the spinothalamic tract. So if there is a lesion, so obviously the ipsilateral vibration and proprioception will be affected, ipsilateral side. So this is a true statement. While the motor involvement will be of the same side, there will be, and contralateral side, pain, temperature, touch will be affected. So this is true. What is false? So they are asking about the except. So except is complete section of the cord. No, it is a hemisection. So this is a false statement. Ipsilateral loss of pain and temperature. No, it is a contralateral loss. As you can see from this diagram, motor loss, it is seen, it is also false. So 1, 2 and 4. 1, 2 and 4 are false. So answer here will be A option. Question 6. All are used as a first line treatment in rheumatoid arthritis except. So first line treatment means they are asking about the disease modifying anti-rheumatic agent DMRDs. So that include methotrexate, that include hydroxychloroquine and sulfasalazine. While the first line agent is not azathioprine. So answer will be D option here. Now, question number 7. All are the features of complicated malaria except pH of more than 7.25, unarousable coma, glucose level of 40 milligram per deciliter, serum creatinine of 5.2. So let's see the features of complicated malaria. A very frequently asked question from the table of Harrison. So there are some very important table of the Harrison which you should be knowing. So these are the features of the complicated malaria. The first one is a unarousable coma. So this question they have directly made from this table. So unarousable coma, that means ki, this is a complicated case. And the second one is acidosis. Acidosis, arterial pH of less than 7.25 they have taken. Now, presence of anemia, severe anemia with a hemoglobin level of less than 5 and the hematocrit of less than 15%. Renal failure, here they have taken a creatinine value of more than 3 and in the question it is 5.2 is given. So that means ki this is a criteria for a complicated or severe malaria. Pulmonary edema, non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema, which can be over-aggravated by the overhydration or lots of IV fluids. So there is a non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema which occur, maybe as a part of a ARDS. Hypoglycemia, the plasma glucose less than 40, which is clear cut, is one of the option in the question. Hypotension with a BP of less than 80 in adults. In children it is less than 50, but in adults less than 80. And of course, a capillary refill time of more than 2. Then, if presence of any bleeding or DIC, then it is a severe malaria. So bleeding or hemorrhage from the gums or nose or signs of DIC. And of course, if there are more than 2 seizures in 24 hours, that indicate a complicated or a severe malaria. So the answer here will be pH more than 7.25 is not a feature. It should be less than 2.5. Less than 7.25. Now come to question number 8. Tongue fasciculations are seen in. So basically this fasciculation means it is a contraction, or we can say the movement of the muscle fiber which is supplied by one single motor neuron unit. So one single motor unit, it supply many fibers, muscle fiber, so they will be twitching, they will be contracting. And the cause for this twitching or contraction is basically the disease or lesion of the motor neuron. Disease of the motor neuron. So whether that motor neuron is of cranial nerves or whether that is of skeletal muscles. So if there is a disease, some example of this motor neuron lesion disease are the SMA, spinomuscular atrophy. It can be ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or it can be motor neuron disease with multiple etiologies. So these lead to the fasciculations. So the tongue fasciculation here will be SMA. It is not a feature of we can say neuromuscular disease or a myopathy. So neuromuscular disease is myasthenia gravis, myopathy is Duchenne muscle dystrophy, so it will not be present. While Guillain-Barré syndrome is a peripheral neuropathy, and in peripheral neuropathy, presence of fasciculation is a very rare finding. It can be present, but a rare finding. So out of the peripheral neuropathy and SMA, the best answer here will be SMA. Question number 9, which is not used in the emergency treatment of hyperkalemia. So this was recently done in the clinical grand rounds on eMedicoz app, this topic of electrolyte imbalance. So the emergency treatment is of hyperkalemia, calcium gluconate is given. Yes, that is to stabilize the membrane. Stabilize the cardiac membrane. It does not decrease the potassium. Insulin, yes, insulin is given because it causes a intracellular shift of potassium, and indeed it is the fastest way to reduce the serum potassium. While salbutamol is a beta blocker, beta agonist, so it causes intracellular shift of the potassium, so it can also be used in a inhaled form. While magnesium sulfate, so there is no role of magnesium sulfate in the emergency management of the hyperkalemia. Magnesium sulfate is mainly used for the torsades de pointes treatment. So answer is D option. Question number 10. Causes of the central cyanosis are all except methemoglobinemia, pulmonary AV fistulas, hypothermia, or high altitude. So the cause again, this is a topic of table from the Harrison. Stat questions come from the table. So central cyanosis and the peripheral cyanosis. So basically the central cyanosis means that there is either a decrease in the oxygen in the environment, that means high altitude, or it is due to the some respiratory dysfunctions, or it could be because of the shunts, right to left shunts, or hemoglobin abnormality. So these are the causes of central cyanosis. That means there is a decreased arterial saturation because of the low oxygen in the environment, because of the impaired pulmonary functions, could be anatomical shunts, or could be hemoglobin abnormality. Remember, hemoglobin abnormality come in the central cyanosis. So methemoglobinemia, sulfhemoglobinemia will be there. While the peripheral cyanosis is due to reduced cardiac output, or maybe a cold exposure like hypothermia, or arterial or venous obstruction. So the answer here will be hypothermia. It will produce a peripheral cyanosis. Question number 11. All are true about the inflammatory bowel disease. So again, as discussed in the class, that there are some topic where there is a guaranteed one question is coming in every exam. So in the GIT, as we have discussed in the GIT, the last moment revision topics, they are inflammatory bowel disease. One question is guaranteed. Second is the serology of hepatitis B. Hepatitis B and malabsorption syndrome. Maybe indirect question can come from the malabsorption syndrome, like cystic fibrosis. That is a topic of malabsorption. So from there the questions have come. So this time the direct question have come from the inflammatory bowel disease and the serology of hepatitis B from the GIT section. So it is asking about the true statement. Crohn's disease has a skip lesion. Yes, this is true. Ulcerative colitis has continuous lesions. Strong genetic predisposition, no. It is a weak genetic predisposition, false. Genetic predisposition is seen, but it is not strong. Crohn's disease has mucosal involvement, no. It is a transmural involvement. While ulcerative colitis has transmural, no. It has a mucosal involvement. So the correct answer here is A option. Question number 12. Chronic hepatitis B has which serological profile? So the chronic hepatitis B, the diagnosis is made, the mandatory diagnosis is made on the basis of presence of HBs antigen plus anti-HBC, and that anti-HBC will be of IgG class. So here it should be IgG class. While other markers which can be seen, maybe plus minus HBe antigen can be seen. If it is a significant replication, plus minus anti-HBe can be seen. If it is insignificant replication, again HBV DNA can be plus minus depending on the replication status. So these are plus minus status, but this is mandatory. Presence of HBs and anti-HBC antibody of IgG class. So in this question, the 4 serological markers are given, and we have to identify ki in hepatitis B which serological profile will be seen. HBs plus, yes, this is plus given. Anti-HBs negative. Remember, anti-HBs means as a rule that there is no virus in the body. So it is a neutralizing antibody. So it can never be seen in a chronic hepatitis B case. IgG anti-HBC, yes, it can be seen. DNA is plus minus. So here plus is given. So you will mark it as the A option here. Coming to question number 13. This time diabetes has 2 questions. One is on the lifestyle modification, that is diet modification, and second is on the drugs of diabetes, especially their side effects. So a patient with diabetes has a blood glucose of 160. What will be the non-pharmacological management in this case? So dietary fibers are mentioned, salt intake, fat in the diet, or cholesterol intake. So the recommendation for a diabetic patient is a very important question, not only for the exam but for the practical management of diabetes as well. So if we look at the carbohydrate, it will be 45 to 60% of what is the percentage, 60% of total calories that we are giving to the patient. Protein 15 to 20 and fat 20 to 30%. Out of those fats, less than 7% should be the saturated fat, 10 to 20% should be mono unsaturated fatty acid, and less than 10% should be the PUFA, that is polyunsaturated fatty acid. Now the cholesterol in the diet should be less than 300 milligrams per deciliter. Fiber intake 25 gram per day for females and 38 grams for male. Approximately you can say 40 grams per day for males. Sodium intake should be less than 2300 milligram per deciliter. So these are the diet recommendation for a patient of diabetes. So out of this, the best correct response will be the fat. The fat should not be more than 30% of the calorie intake. While what about the dietary fiber? Dietary fiber we have seen in males it was 38, females it is 25. So it is very high dietary fiber. Salt intake less than 5000? No, it should be less than 2300. So this is also false. Cholesterol intake less than 300. Here less than 100 is written. So it is false, grossly false. So answer is C option. 14th is again an overlap of medicine with the pharmacology. So sickle cell anemia drugs are L-glutamine. Yes, that has got a antioxidant effect. So it will be beneficial for sickle cell disease. While pembrolizumab, it is given for the cancers like melanoma, or we can say the CA lung. While the C option is voxelotor. So the mechanism of voxelotor is it bind to the hemoglobin stabilizing oxygenated hemoglobin and it prevent the HbS polymerization. So hence it will be useful. While the antibody which is a new antibody here is against the P-selectin, and it is a new treatment to prevent a vaso-occlusive episodes. So this is the new drug or new antibody here. While the hydroxyurea, the mechanism of the hydroxyurea is it increases the fetal hemoglobin and beneficial effect on the hydration of the RBCs, prevent the vascular adhesion, and therefore it can be used for a sickle cell disease. So the sickle cell anemia drugs which can be used here are A option, C option, D option. If it was a accept, then answer will be B option. Question number 15. Bone fracture seen with which anti-diabetes medicine? Canagliflozin, rosiglitazone, repaglinide, or voglukos. So it is seen with canagliflozin, true, but it is also seen with rosiglitazone. Yes, both of them can cause the bone fractures, but rosiglitazone is not used these days. So therefore it could be a recall error, and if it is a recall error, then the best option will be canagliflozin. Question number 16. All are AIDS defining tumors except. So the typical AIDS defining tumor are Kaposi sarcoma. It is the most specific tumor. Then cervical cancer, yes. NHL, yes, it is seen here, and primary CNS lymphomas. Typical of AIDS. Melanoma is not a AIDS defining tumor. So these are some of the questions of medicine which are asked in the INICET exam, and the topics are very familiar topic. These are the common diseases which you encounter. So if you have any doubt related to these questions, you can ask in the comment section. And best wishes for all your exams. Thank you.